Now, before you are the champions from various weight divisions. They have the IBO in there. I don't really care about the IBO. But what I wanted to show is the unification bouts that can actually come about, and when unification bouts actually mean something, right? Sometimes unification bouts don't mean nothing really, because yeah, you're beating a champion in a respective boxing organization or sanctioning body, but usually it doesn't necessarily mean it's the strongest person or the best person in that boxing body. So these are just things worth thinking about. This is the person at the highest level in that boxing body, but nonetheless. Anyways, when we're talking about unification, of course, everybody is watering their mouths to see Deontay Wilder face Anthony Joshua. And just to make a point of this, I think the best boxer is not either of the two. So that unification would be great and would give an undisputed champion, but I think Tyson Fury is better than both of them. All right? Now, already we know that Alexander Usyk, he has nobody really to unify with, and he's pretty much done with cruiserweight, so we'll skip that. At lightweight heavyweight division, this is the best division of them all. And the reason being, we literally have a champion for each sanctioning body. The WBA has Dmitry Bivol, IBF has Arthur Beterbiev, the WBO has Sergey Kovalev, and the WBC has Alexander Gavorsnik. I tell you, this is perfect. Again, even if they do unify and you have an undisputed champion, it's not necessarily that that person is the best in the division. We know that there's other people who are coming up, Marcus Brown, Badou Jack, and several others in the division who possibly could be better than these guys. But at the present moment in time, these are the guys at the top of the division. So not always is a unification indicative of the best in the division. Now, I just want to point out two things, okay? Now, Deontay Wilder, I believe, has been a heavyweight champion for longer than any other champion in the division. I think he's the WBC champion longer than Anthony Joshua has been. But in the process of Anthony Joshua becoming champion, he has become a unified champion with the WBO, IBF, and WBA, which is a remarkable achievement on his part. Having said that, though, Deontay Wilder is probably the more experienced of the two, even though he's not as technically sound in certain areas as Anthony Joshua is. That doesn't mean that Deontay Wilder is not a technically sound boxer. Just want to put all of that out there. Now, in the light heavyweight division, like I was saying before, this division is not necessarily indicative of the best of the division. Nonetheless, each one of these guys brings something to the table. Sergey Kovalev retaking back the WBO throne from Eleider Alvarez, defeating him, was a really good look on his part. He's probably the most experienced of all of the champions there. So he has the most experience. It doesn't mean he's the best, but he has the most experience. When we look at the super middleweight division, we have a new crop of people there. We have Anthony Durrell, who recently won his title. Callum Smith, who beat George Groves to get the title. Chris Eubank, who recently gained a title. Is that the IBF title? What title is that? Let me have a look. It's the WBO title, okay? So he just recently, no, not the WBO, the IBO, okay. He defended his IBO title. Okay. So he's not a real champion yet. Okay. Caleb Plant, who's I believe the WBA, and Callum Smith, who is the WB something. Let me see. Callum Smith is the WBA. Yes, he's the WBA. Caleb Plant is the IBF, and Anthony Durrell is the WBC. Those are really the titles I care about. Not really Chris Eubank's title. I'm sorry about that. Now, the most experienced of all of them would be Anthony Durrell. He's been champion before, so he has some more championship experience than all of them there. We have a new crop of champions that came up. Yes, as in the middleweight division, we have a new crop of middleweight champions that came up. Daniel Jacobs became IBF champion after Canelo Alvarez became WBC WBA champion. So therefore, Canelo Alvarez held the WBC title before. So Canelo Alvarez in this division, when you're talking about middleweights, he's the most experienced middleweight champion out there. Demetrius Andrade, Daniel Jacobs is the next one. I think Demetrius Andrade is the next one, the WBO. Would have been Billy Joe Saunders, but he's no longer champion. In the super welterweight division, Jarrett Hurd is the most experienced. Actually had unifications and so on, so that Jarrett Hurd is the most experienced in the division. We have Jaime Munguia, who's kind of the hot one in the division, but I do believe that is, him unifying with Jarrett Hurd would be suicide. Tony Harrison just beat Jamel Charlo to become the WBC champion. So these are the champions that are out there. Jarrett Hurd, of course, having stopped Tony Harrison. I don't think Tony Harrison will want to go and have a rematch with Jarrett Hurd, but if he does want to do that, so be it. Right? But Jarrett Hurd is a beast. He is the man of that division, and he is the most experienced of all the champions there. Terrence Crawford is in the welterweight division, as well as Sean Porter, as well as Errol Spence Jr. and Keith Thurman. Now, the most experienced champion in all of them, I do believe, is Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman has remained the WBA champion for the longest while. He had to give up the WBC. He has fought the stiffer competition in all of the welterweights there. Next in line is Sean Porter, even though he has not been champion for very long. Errol Spence Jr. is next, and then after that would come Terrence Crawford, and then would come Sean Porter. Even though Sean Porter has been champion before, it wasn't very long. It was a short-lived championship. So I guess the order is Keith Thurman, Errol Spence Jr., and then Sean Porter, and then Terrence Crawford. Okay? So you got to bear in mind, Keith Thurman is still a force to be reckoned with in the welterweight division. I think a lot of people are overlooking Keith Thurman, and you just don't do that. Okay. Now the other divisions I'm not really up to speed with as much as everybody else, but I can tell you that Regis Prograis is one of those champions you have to look at, and Maurice Hooker recently became champion. So I would say Regis Prograis is probably the most experienced of this new crop of new champions in Maurice Hooker. And then I guess Jose Carlos Ramirez would come in next. So not really seeing Reggie progress anywhere there, though. He's just the box rec. And then in the lightweight division, Vasily Lomachenko is probably the most experienced champion there. At the lightweight, yeah, Mikey Garcia comes next. They also have Richard Comey, who is, I don't know what Richard Comey is. Hold on a second, let me tell you. He is IBF champion. Don't know how he became IBF champion. I thought Mikey Garcia was both IBF and WBA or WBC. Which one is it? WBC? WBC. I thought he was IBF and WBC. Probably got stripped. In the super featherweight division, the most experienced guy is Miguel Berchelt, but you also have Tevin Farmer and Gervonta Davis. So the order would be Miguel Berchelt, then Gervonta Davis, and then Tevin Farmer. These are the super featherweight champions. At featherweight, we have Leo Santa Cruz and Gary Russell Jr. I believe Leo Santa Cruz is the champion before Gary Russell Jr. I can't remember. Then you have Oscar Valdez, and that's about it. So I'll stop right there. Now, in terms of matchups, I would love to see the following champions face each other: Leo Santa Cruz and Gary Russell Jr. I would also love to see, at super featherweight, either Tevin Farmer versus Gervonta Davis or Miguel Berchelt versus either of those two guys. That would be a good matchup. Vasily Lomachenko versus Mikey Garcia would be good, or Richard Comey if he could. Here, Regis Prograis against Maurice Hooker would be fine, if it hasn't happened before. And in the welterweight division, just mix and match them. It doesn't matter. Keith Thurman versus Sean Porter, Keith Thurman versus Errol Spence Jr., Sean Porter versus Errol Spence. Those are the more doable ones. Terrence Crawford might be a little bit more difficult to make with each and every one of them, but I'd love to see Terrence Crawford mixing it up with them as well. In this division, super welterweight, honestly speaking, since Jarrett Hurd is going to lead the division, it's up to him. If he wants to face Tony Harrison again and knock him out, fine. If he wants to face Jaime Munguia and knock him out, fine. It doesn't really bother me. But you can mix and match it. Saul Alvarez. Well, we're seeing it happen, so I'm just grateful. Daniel Jacobs was absolutely the next guy that needed to be faced, and then Demetrius Andrade if possible. Since Andrade probably won't face Jacobs, Canelo face Demetrius Andrade after. That would be great. Callum Smith versus Caleb Plant would be fantastic matchup. Or Anthony Durrell versus either of those guys would be great. But I think the weakest one in them, believe it or not, is Anthony Durrell. Now in this division, this is just fantastic. Any one of these guys could face each other, in my opinion. I would love to see Artur Beterbiev versus Sergey Kovalev first. And then you can have Dmitry Bivol versus Alexander Dvorak. In the cruiserweight division, forget that. And we already talked about the heavyweight. So that's the way how I look at it. Unifications are always fantastic. They're not always the easiest thing in the world to get done. If people really wanted to, they can always do the Super 7 or round robin, and that could accelerate the process. But again, like I said before, there are other people in those divisions who may be better than those guys at the top of the divisions. But anyway, this is my just talking about unification and even undisputed world champions. I just decided to refer to this. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You guys have a great one.